Hello there. Today we are going to discuss intertextuality. The prefix inter means in between, and textuality, of course, refers to texts. Now, who was the person who came up with this idea of intertextuality? Actually, it was Julia Kristeva, when she referred to the fact that any literary text draws from other literary texts which came before it, in a number of quotations which may be explicit or implicit, but the fact is, to put it in a nutshell, that there's nothing new under the sun. So it is as if every text that has been written before the one in question helped to build up this idea in the new text. Now, this is not something only pertaining the ideas of Julia Kristeva. If we have to think about systems, we have to go back to the world of structuralists.
Structuralists thought of a text as a closed or finished system. It contains all the meaning necessary to understand everything. I'm leaving you a video in which I explain this in length.
Structuralism began mainly with linguistics and Ferdinand de Saussure, and his idea that any language is a system, right? Closed and finished. And he also thought that meaning is arbitrary. So whenever you talk about the meaning of something, you should be thinking about what that thing means and what it doesn't mean, and why or how that meaning came into being. Let's say that you talk about a chair. Where does the word chair come from, and who has decided to name that thing a chair? And what's the idea you get in your mind when you think about a chair? Then there were other people such as Lévi-Strauss, who studied from anthropology myths and stories and the meaning of those things in society and in the relationship between human beings.
For post-structuralists, though, meaning is unstable and not fixed. Therefore, a text is not a closed but an open system, not whole but full of holes.
Then we should also mention Roland Barthes and his idea that, his late idea, because at the very beginning he was very concerned with fashion and cuisine, but then he started thinking about literary texts and the fact that the author is dead. Now, what's the meaning of that? The death of the author. He thought that every literary piece that is written and published, once the public gets hold of that literary piece and they read it, the author, unfortunately, dies because you appropriate the meaning of the piece. So, say that you read a story, for example, Cinderella. So, what's the meaning of Cinderella for you? Maybe the meaning is different for me or for some other person. And this brings to the table the fact that you can rewrite a piece endlessly, changing the central notion of the piece and attributing different meanings to it. I will recommend the video I posted recently on Roald Dahl's version of Cinderella, which is very interesting because it's different and because it rhymes. You will find at the end of the video some questions with the answer key, in which I offer a comparison intertext with the Grimm's version of the story. In this case, the intertext between Roald Dahl's Cinderella and the Brothers Grimm Cinderella would be an overt relationship, because the author who rewrites the story doesn't really use it in an implicit way. He directly talks about the same piece, rewriting it. Now, what about the Mask of the Red Death? And I'm leaving you another video with an abridged version and again some reflections and questions about it. Have you ever thought that Poe might have drawn on the structure of the tragedy Macbeth? Food for thought, because this may be an overt intertextual relationship between one and the next. Of course, Macbeth came first, and then you have the Mask of the Red Death. But probably, if you analyze it, the structure is very similar. Okay, with all this being said, we are going to look at a few slides to clarify a bit further. So, off we go.
I will be establishing the covered intertextuality between the Trois Corbis and the Raven. Say hi to our little friend up there. The Trois Corbis is a traditional Celtic ballad, whereas The Raven was written by Edgar Allan Poe as a poem. So, in the Trois Corbis, the protagonists are two crows, and they can talk. If you read The Raven, you will notice that there is an intruder. A raven, just one, and he has a name. His name is Nevermore, and he has the ability to speak as well. In the Trois Corbis, there's a knight who, having been slain, has been abandoned by friends and family. And in The Raven, the persona has been abandoned by the lost Lenore. Obviously, he is so sad that he might let himself die. The themes in the Trois Corbis are death, loneliness, loss, and sorrow. Practically the same as in The Raven: death, loneliness, loss, and sorrow. So even though I guess Edgar Allan Poe had no intention of copying the themes from the Trois Corbis, he got in the end an effect which is very similar. And in both you have the fact that there's personification, meaning the animals can talk and behave as human beings. So these are the points of coincidence from which we get this notion of intertextuality. Now, even though there are points of coincidence, and that would be the covered intertextuality, we can also discuss the differences. For example, in the Trois Corbis, as it is the structure of a ballad, you get a narrator. The narrator is external. It is not the persona as you find in The Raven. If you are in doubt as to what the difference is, you may try my videos on poetry. There's a playlist in which I help you understand the structure of poems, ballads, and things of the sort, songs as well. Then again, the Trois Corbis is a ballad, and it respects the structure of the ballads with the stanzas required and the length and the simplicity and the story which is told in one episode, whereas in The Raven we get a poem, and as a poem it is more intricate and the description of events is more complex. And of course, as it's the persona who speaks, you get more insight into the psychological factors. Then, on the Trois Corbis, you get terror, that is gore, a corpse, and all of the things the Trois Corbis describe as to what their means of feeding is. And on the other hand, you have in The Raven horror, because it's psychological. There isn't gore, there isn't a corpse, but you get this notion of mystery and the supernatural.
So here we are again. Have you ever thought about the social media and how it draws upon meaning by interrelating one topic to the next, one video to the next, one screenshot to the next. It's a very interesting thought that everything is interrelated there. And what about the electronic encyclopedias, virtual encyclopedias, and the hypertext? Every time you're reading something and you get a link to something else called the hypertext, you are moving on to another meaning, and meanings which are all interrelated. So that is one of the clearest examples of the intertext in our day and age. And what about songs? Have you ever thought about songs and how they relate to different literary texts? For example, The Highwayman by Lorena McKennitt is an interpretation of a poem. So the literary piece has brought on an intertext, which is a song. But the literary piece is a poem written by Alfred Noyes. And what about Metallica? Yes, indeed, Sad But True. Have you ever thought that the song Sad But True may be an intertext of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? It is to me, but I'm a fan. What can I do? So with all this being said, and always appreciating the views and the likes, I will suggest that if this content has been useful for you, you may subscribe and give me likes and everything else, and activate the bell button so that you receive notifications. Well, this will be all for today, so bye-bye. See you soon.